Hey everyone, it is Matthew here, and today I am super excited to be bringing you a new video, this time about the Xbox Series X. So we're going to be both unboxing and reviewing the console in this video, so without further ado, let's get right into it. First thing we're going to notice are 4 pull tabs on the box, 2 of which are on the sides, and 2 of which are on the bottom. Next, we'll be able to flip the lid and be presented with the Xbox Series X in all of its huge glory. We're also going to notice right away that the Xbox Series X is a very dense console and it's also very heavy. That said, it feels built very well and it doesn't really matter since it'll be sitting right next to your TV anyways. Underneath it, you'll find a quick start guide that shows you how to set up your Xbox using your phone as well as the various ports on the back of the console. On the flip side of that, you'll see how to pair your controller with your new console and that the controller does unfortunately take AA batteries. Behind the console, you'll find an accessories box. On the right of that box, you'll find the new Xbox Series X and Series S controller. Now, once you undo the tape, the first thing you're going to notice about this controller is really just how similar it is to the Xbox One controller, especially the Xbox One S and One X controllers. And that's not really a bad thing. They were great controllers and I can't really ask for too much else out of them. There are some changes, however, and that comes in the form of a redesigned D-pad which borrows from the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller, as well as a dedicated share button between the menu and view buttons. You'll also find a set of Duracell AA batteries, a power cable which is the same as what you found in the Xbox One S and One X, and a HDMI 2.1 compliant high-speed HDMI cable that supports 120Hz at 4K resolutions as well as 8K. Unboxing the console itself, we'll have to remove the cardboard sleeve. Now as we unwrap the console itself, we're going to be greeted first with a huge fan. Now there's also a really cool signature Xbox green insert on the inside that I happen to think looks really cool and I think really spices up the otherwise very minimalistic, very functional design. Otherwise, the design itself is so inoffensive that it's hard to find anything to complain about with it, and I think it'll just blend really nicely into your living room setup. Now, if you're thinking about putting your Xbox Series X horizontally, just don't. It looks awful. And as far as I/O goes, on the rear you're going to find a proprietary storage expansion slot, an HDMI out port, as well as 2 super speed USB 3 ports, an Ethernet port, and a power port. And for a size reference, I have here footage of a Nintendo Switch and Baby Yoda. And isn't he just adorable? So now that we've unboxed the Xbox Series X, let's talk about the review. So getting right into things, the first thing you need to know is that the Xbox Series X is powered by an all-new 8-core CPU and 12 teraflop GPU, based off of AMD's latest Zen 2 and RDNA 2 architectures, respectively. Now the new GPU allows for a variety of impressive graphical features, and the first one I want to talk about is variable rate shading. Now, essentially, variable rate shading allows the console to prioritize what the player is seeing on screen and render it at a higher quality, while lowering the quality of everything else in the game. Now, this essentially allows the console to target higher resolutions and achieve greater frame rate and resolution stability as a whole. Secondly, the new graphics allow for HDMI 2.1 compliance, and this means that the console now supports variable refresh rate displays, which allows the display to match the console's frame rate to prevent screen tearing, as well as support for up to 4K at 120Hz and even 8K resolutions. It should be noted, however, that most 4K TVs on the market don't really support 120 frames per second content, and that the ones that do are pretty pricey. That said, it's still a really nice future-proof feature to have, so it's hard to complain. Additionally, ray tracing has been a huge staple of this next generation of consoles, and the Xbox Series X graphics also support that. Now, ray tracing essentially means that gamers are going to be able to experience significantly more realistic lighting and reflections in real time in-game. Lastly, these graphics culminate in excellent performance. These graphical visual features all sound great, but none of it matters if the console can't actually run games smoothly. Unfortunately, the Xbox Series X's hardware has proved plenty capable, rendering graphics-intensive games such as Gears 5 and Forza Horizon 4 in beautiful 4K HDR quality with a silky smooth 60 frames per second. And in some games, you even have the option of enabling a 120 frames per second mode. Gears 5 is one example, and other games like Rocket League are slowly adding support. Visuals aside though, the other game-changing feature of the Xbox Series X and this new console generation in general is the integration of SSDs. From a personal perspective, I cannot emphasize enough how big of a deal this is to the entire user experience. Everything from console boot times to game load times and the overall fluidity of the user interface on both a system and game level sees a huge jump in performance and stability. Additionally, Microsoft has leveraged its own custom Velocity architecture to leverage the up to 40 times faster SSD in the new console to improve load times in games over the previous generation. To do this, the Velocity architecture uses custom game asset decompression hardware, which in short reduces not only load times, but game sizes and CPU workloads as well. This means that your 1TB of storage can go even further, and that the CPU can offer even more performance for developers to work with the possibility of bigger than ever game worlds with less loading times all around. The biggest downside to the Velocity architecture right now, at least, is that it does need to be worked into the game by the developer for its features and performance to really shine. If not, really the only benefit you'll be seeing is just an overall improvement in load times and responsiveness across the board. That is not where the story ends for the SSD, however, because the SSD also enables one more new feature called Quick Resume, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Essentially, the Xbox Series X can now save the state of up to 5 games at the same time, so you can switch between them and pick up right where you left off. This works incredibly well and even does so after you turn off the console, since it saves the state of the game to the SSD itself. Now, the last thing we need to talk about in terms of hardware is one of the smallest changes that have been made, and those are to the new Xbox wireless controller, where Evolution is really the name of the game. The controller is now a tad bit smaller and features a completely matte finish, which I like a lot better than the glossy and sometimes slippery triggers on the Xbox One controller. You also now get a USB-C port on the controller, as well as a share button, so you don't have to stop playing your game to get a screenshot or clip of your games. Additionally, Microsoft has added a raised texture to the grips and triggers for, you guessed it, improved grip. While all of these are welcome changes and additions, none of them really scream next gen, and that's kind of okay. The Xbox One controller was an excellent controller, and frankly, I didn't really have much on my wish list for this generation. The only real problem I actually have with this controller is the fact that you still do not get a rechargeable battery for it out of the box. On the topic of evolutionary changes, now we should talk about the operating system. To keep it brief, the interface is pretty much unchanged compared to the latest Xbox One software update, with the only new addition being dynamic wallpapers for the Xbox Series X and Series S home screens. While it doesn't feel particularly new, the UI has undergone 2 or 3 complete overhauls since the Xbox One's original launch back in 2013, and all of these redesigns were driven heavily by user feedback. So it's easy to say that everything feels snappy, it looks nice, and it works well. And frankly, I don't blame Microsoft for not wanting to drop it just for the sake of making the console feel more next gen. Plus, based on Microsoft's track record, I doubt this UI is going to be the one that this generation ends with. To wrap things up, my thoughts on this console are just overwhelmingly positive. And the reason why is because the Xbox Series X is incredibly quick, incredibly fluid. It runs games like a dream, and it's completely silent, and you can just pick up right where you left off with your Xbox One or One X. That said, in spite of all those amazing quality of life improvements, right now, there aren't really any killer apps, or even supply for that matter, for the console. And frankly, I just don't think for most people it's going to be worth the stress worth the rush, and certainly not worth paying anything more than the $500 price tag to get this holiday season. Now, holiday 2021, I think that's going to be a different story. I think there are going to be plenty of amazing games out for it, and I think there are going to be plenty of games that are built with the Xbox Series X in mind. But right now, just wait. Alright guys, that does it for today's video. If you have any questions about the Xbox Series X, let me know down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to get to all of you. And if you like this video, like it. If you loved it, subscribe. And again, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.